Hello friends, here he is again, Frankie from Germany. And on my channel, there really hasn't been anything going on for a while, let's say 3 years. And you were probably constantly annoyed, wondering why he keeps posting those cycling videos in his shorts. Well, yes, a lot has changed. And now I'm here in a new apartment, which is also very small, but we'll get to that in a moment. And I've decided to reactivate my video channel again. Fortunately, many subscribers have remained loyal to me. I had a family member who became seriously ill and whom I had to take care of. My family situation has also changed a bit. So I moved into a new apartment, and my old office, which you all still know and maybe still see at the top of the banner on my video channel, that's now history. I have to make do with a bit less space, namely this small IKEA desk here. I'll show you a photo. And I genuinely enjoyed taking on difficult challenges, and I still want to continue to actively pursue my hobby. Keep going, soldering SMDs and so on. That's what it's all about. That's probably why you clicked on this and saw in the video title, First Steps in SMD Soldering. I thought it was a good idea since I had to set up my workbench all over again myself. Everything else I sold, or it's down in my basement and I'll never find it again. And I just thought, this is a good opportunity to take a look after 5 years and see what's out there now. New things on the market, especially on the Chinese market. I buy a lot from AliExpress. And everything I introduce to you today will, of course, also be linked below in the description. The channel gets a few cents if you buy through those links, and it doesn't cost you anything. Well, you already know that. Affiliate links, I think that's what they're called. Exactly. Let's get to the topic. Today, I want to show you how I set things up here, which tools I bought, and what you actually need to seriously get started with SMD soldering. SMD soldering, of course, means working with very small components. And at the beginning, I think there's a bit of fear about whether you can handle it. I'll show you a few small really tiny components, and believe me, it can get even smaller. That already moves into the very professional realm when we're talking about components with sizes of 0.2, 0.3 or so. I can't recommend that you start with those. Down to 0.6, 0.3, I think that's what they're called. I'd have to check again. Or 0.4. So 0.4, as I'll show you in a moment, is already very, very small. For that, of course, you need a good pair of tweezers. And I'll show you my favorite tweezers here. These here, this is an X17 from Mechanics, I think that's what they're called, and they make some pretty good stuff. You'll find a few more things from Mechanic, and I can already see this one's a bit dirty here, you see that? Exactly, and that definitely needs to be cleaned off. Dirt is your enemy. Everything needs to be cleaned, and I can only recommend 100% alcohol. I hope I can get it on here now like this. You should definitely consider getting yourself a handy spray bottle of this solution right now. Whether you are currently preparing complex circuit boards or simply cleaning off your precision tweezers, and so on, then everything needs to be cleaned. Exactly, so let's get started. Here I've prepared something smaller for you. These are your final bosses, if we're being precise. So we have different sizes. Here, what you see here is 0.12. 0.6, these are 3.2 millimeters by 1.6 millimeters. That's actually still quite manageable. You can see it here. I can just put it somewhere here, and so on. You can manage that even without a microscope or magnifying glass. Then it gets a bit more difficult. Then here we have the 0.8 and 0.5. They are 2 by 1.25 millimeters. Now here we have a light emitting diode. You can barely see it. That's 0.6 and 0.3. And that's 1.6 by 0.8 millimeters. And then it gets into a range where I would say you should stop because they get so small. Here we still have a 0402 capacitor. Here you can also see the tape where these capacitors are stored. And these are already 1 millimeter by 0.5 millimeters. So these things here, if you drop them on the carpet, well, then they're gone. because they're so small, it's like specks of fly dirt. You can hardly find them. I've also got something else here for you. As an example, I've placed a few processes next to them. I'll turn this one over so you can see the contacts as well. Yes, it has to be said, anyone can do SMD soldering. And of course, it can be intimidating when you see these tiny components. But there are various physical properties involved in soldering. You'll see that later. There is a surface tension in the solder, and so on, which will make your work easier. And actually, this process has matured so much and become so good that anyone can solder with it. We will also order our circuit boards from a supplier, my personal jlcpcb, but there are also some in Germany where you can order, but the time advantage has become so minimal. But I'll explain that to you later. In any case, just have the courage to try. I'll show you the first steps, how it works best, and what might have helped me as well if someone had given me these tips when I started 10 years ago. I started with SMD soldering, I think 12 years ago. Back then, I was at Entropia here in Karlsruhe, a computer club, and they had us solder a circuit board together. And it was a kind of gyroscope with the corresponding LEDs. If I find it, I'll show it to you here as a video. And I think it must still be lying around somewhere in a basement. We'll see. And in any case, that's when I realized, wow, this is actually really easy. So it's actually not that complicated at all. And believe me, it's not that complicated with the right tools and the right videos to watch. It works. All right, let's go back again. So here you can see a typical circuit board like this. I think this is a battery charger. The battery is connected here, and then it can be charged via USB. And the LEDs then indicate whether it's charging or fully charged. The actual chip is this one. It's easy to handle. I think it's a Zoe 8-pin. There's nothing you can do there. Here we already have an 0805 capacitor. And here we're already starting with 0603 resistors. Here's another bridge, as you can see. And you can just buy things like this on AliExpress, on Amazon, and so on for just a small amount, like I think 50 cents, €1 or so. But making it yourself is just cooler. In the first steps, I'll of course also show you how to design circuit boards and so on. But today we're just covering the basics. Let's go back to the desk again. As I already said, we need a good pair of tweezers. I can recommend this one to you. You can also get other ones. There are also very expensive ones from Nipex and so on. I'll just put it here so you can see it better. And it must not be magnetic. That's really important because otherwise these little things will just stick to your tips. You can try it out here because mine wasn't really clean here. Let's give it a try. So when you open it now, this SMD component sticks because it's so light. Does it stick to the arms of your tweezers? That's why it has to be this way. Here, the 4 things aren't coming off. You can tap it a bit on the table and then it works as soon as, thank God, the little thing comes off. I don't do this so easily over monitors, but I think now we have the backside. You can also see, okay, it works well on the silicone mat. It works with the larger parts. Of course, it's easier. As you can clearly see right here, that is absolutely no problem at all. Okay, so we have these specialized non-magnetic tweezers where you always have to be extremely careful that the inner arms don't get dirty or contaminated and so on. We also have another different pair, which you can safely use with high heat. And that is also perfectly fine, also from the brand Mechanics, specifically the SM17 model, but it is just a bit too heavy for my personal preference. So let's take a look at the next option. It's not as light as the other one, and somehow I don't like it. You have to remember when we're assembling a circuit board, so we apply the solder paste here. I'll show you that later. And then the individual parts are positioned onto this circuit board. So you go over here and place them on there and slide them around a bit. And then the circuit board is heated. And then you basically already have a finished circuit. But we'll go through all of this step by step. And also how you can test such a circuit, whether everything is working and when it should be connected to power, and so on. Everything will be covered on this channel. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything. And if you have any tips, feel free to leave them in the comments. You know the drill. All right, anyway, you can also order these. Where is it there? Anyway, you can also order these as well. One good feature is that The precision tips are made of ceramic 80. You can comfortably work with them, even under extreme heat. Of course, that's also possible with the other ones, but I think these are much more heat resistant compared to the steel ones. Every steel tweezer, I'll just lay them out here side by side. Let's see how much they cost. For that, let's check AliExpress. Of course, I could also order from Amazon, that's clear. But here, for example, we have these ceramic ones. Then you can already see this thing costs 7 euros and 9 cents. That's really not much at all. You probably have to pay a bit more on Amazon, I think. Or you just wait a week and then you'll have it too. I've already ordered a lot from AliExpress. You'll also find the links down below in the description. And so far, I haven't had any issues at all. And you get really good updates. Where is your item right now? When did it leave China? When will it arrive in Germany? Is customs clearance complete? And so on. Sometimes I really get fed up. Many emails from AliExpress. Those would then have to be filtered out or so. No idea. So at least 2 or 3 per day for a delivery. If you have 5 or 6 deliveries, that becomes a bit much. But they also do one thing. They pack everything together in one package and then send it to you. That's also quite nice. Works very well. I've also ordered a ton of parts for my bike, but that's just by the way. All right. So 7 euros and 90 cents is not a price. Let's go back to the other one. Did I prepare that one too? Yes. Here we have these chip tint plating tweezers. You can see it very nicely here as well. 4 euros and 90 cents is affordable for everyone. So that's no big deal, I'd say. All right, that's it for the pink tints for now. Next, we also need a brush, and if possible, one that's relatively sturdy. Since we have to clean our circuit boards from flux after soldering, I have something for you as well. Let's take a look at the desk. And this is what it looks like. Stainless steel bristles on one side and fiber bristles on the other. And whenever you find that you want to thoroughly clean the circuit board, you just go over it carefully like this. But before you do that, I will show you right now. Beforehand, you should spray it generously with some isopropyl alcohol. There just for a moment. And then you can wait. The alcohol will evaporate completely now. And then you can very easily and thoroughly clean this entire electronic circuit board. Clean it here very carefully so that the parts, the components don't fly off. Sometimes they're not soldered on very firmly, but we'll get to that. And the stainless steel brush is for the initial cleaning process. Yeah, sometimes there are also these tiny solder points here that have stuck to the circuit board. You can simply brush them off here, and then you go over it again gently in another direction with this brush. So I can really recommend it to you. This brush is also very inexpensive. You can get it for 5 euros and 19 cents on AliExpress. And it has a very unique special feature. So you can, and I'll show you right here on the desk, you can actually, right here, you can change the brushes if they get damaged, especially these parts here, which tend to bend easily, and so on. You just screw a new one on here, and then you can use it again, and the same goes for the other side. That works really well too. There's still a bit of alcohol here, as I showed you, but it's almost evaporated. You can already see that's the advantage. When it comes to alcohol, I can only recommend to you, and to get a kind of vice as well for your circuit boards, because that way they become nice and heavy and you can fix them on your desk. This silicone mat here is also very good. You can get it too on Amazon, I think, for a small price. It's meant to withstand all the heat. You'll see later when we heat up our circuit boards a lot and then they need to cool down somewhere, this material is perfect for that. Just clamp it in here like this, secure it tightly, and then the thing is fixed in place. So it can't slip and so on. And that's really important because we place SMD components here and they're just loosely sitting on top. And that's why a fixture, as it's called, is so useful. Well, yes, it's just a bit more expensive, but it's already served me very well. I used to have that CNC vise, it's back there, but I'm not going to bring it out now because it's so heavy. It was even heavier, but it easily costs 60 euros. You can really save money here, and you also have different options for clamping a circuit board. Left, right, top, bottom, everything is possible. Let's go back to the desk. So we also have the additional possibility to clamp it in here as well. There are specifically designed tools for that purpose, but you really have to exercise extreme caution not to accidentally shear off or damage any of the delicate components. But it would work like this too. Or as I showed you, here or also here. I hope my sausage fingers aren't bothering you too much. I have to screw on the other side. All right, there we go. So there are grooves here as well so that it can be clamped in perfectly. And that way the thing is fixed in place just as the name suggests. And you can easily place the SMD components on it and place them. Here we have another empty circuit board. Maybe you can see it better this way. Oh, that one doesn't fit in at all. It's way too big. All right, then let's use this one. So, of course, we also need a few additional parts, and the most important one is actually the flux. So you can see it here. I use the KL558 and this extra device here. You can also buy it on AliExpress. I think it costs about €2 or so. With it, you can easily squeeze out the flux here. I also have this silicone. Come on, get down. This silicone thingy. Come on. When you are working on a circuit board and need to focus on specific solder pads or components, applying this flux ensures that the molten solder flows smoothly and adheres to the surfaces, creating a solid connection. Pulls back onto the metallic solder surface, and where the solder mask is, meaning the green part, everything stays clean. You need this when you're soldering CPUs, where the pins are very close together. And so you can first apply a bit of flux, then go over it with the soldering iron. And then the flux either pulls back onto the soldering iron, then just onto the metallic surfaces, so that everything is nice and clean. And that's why you also need the brush, so that afterwards you can easily remove the residue from the flux. The second thing I have here is well, I don't even really know exactly what it's called. It is a specialized copper mesh, which you can use quite effectively with your soldering iron to soak up and remove any excess solder from your work. This tool is incredibly helpful for cleaning up your circuit boards. This works very well with these things, and when it's full, like here, just cut it off with side cutters. Carefully snip or cut it off with your scissors, and then you can quite easily remove any of the excess solder residue once again. Oh, and one more thing. I almost forgot to tell you exactly where you can get these amazing products. So here you see the KL558 flux, and you also get this right away. What's it called again? Desoldering braid, that's right. So you can get both in one package. It's a good deal. I'll link it for you again down in the description. So then we also need solder paste. And as you can see, I had to search for a while to get it. It's called XG50. The reason it's so hard to get is probably because it contains lead. All my solder paste, solder wires, and so on contain lead. It is somewhat hazardous to your health if you don't have an extraction system. But I also have to say, with how little I solder, it probably won't have any effect on me. But if you solder every day and do it as your main job, then you really should have an extraction system and at least protect yourself. All right, here we have the XG50. This is what it looks like. I'll show you. If you examine the substance closely under a microscope, you can see microscopic spherical particles of solder that are essentially suspended and floating in a thick flux paste. They are held in a state of suspension within the mixture. This is then applied to the circuit board and then soldered firmly together with the components. I'll show you all of that next time. Let's quickly go to the website where I finally found it. And that was eBay. Right, you can also see here X-Mechanic XG50. It's not exactly cheap, but you can. Well, it easily lasts you over a year. So I think this solder paste, it gets so old that you have to throw it away before you've used it all up. You really only need about 1 gram or 1.5 grams for a circuit board. That's really very little. And we'll apply it to the circuit board using a stencil. And I'll show you all of that next time. All right, that should be it for now. You've been introduced to several small tools. And I would be happy if you let me know in the comments what could have been done better. Maybe the audio wasn't right and so on. I've been out of it for 3 years. I have no idea how to do it properly. I hope that as an OBS operator, I have at least some of your goodwill, and in any case, look forward to the next video. We'll take care of which soldering irons we buy then, how a circuit board is manufactured, how to order one, and also how to design a circuit board. All of that will be discussed in the next videos. I hope you enjoyed it. So see you then, yours Frank.